So please help me welcome the protagonist, Tye Sheridan, and one of the producers of the film, Zacarias.
Okej, to witajmy ponownie. Tye Sheridana, jednego z producentów filmu Zacariasa.
Can we have another mic, please?
Mamy kolejny mikrofon.
So if I could start just by... Oh, and we have Sara Murphy as well. Hello.
A i mamy jeszcze też producentkę tutaj z nami, Sara Murphy.
So I just wanted to start by asking you, because this is a period film and yet you kind of forget it. And you're talking about the time that, you know, many people see as the kind of, you know, the time when everything was simpler, people were nicer, which is not the case in this film. So you switch this stereotype, you know, a little bit. And I was wondering, was it difficult? Because I mean, you know, you talk about so many things in this film that we can kind of understand so well today also, which kind of makes it a contemporary story in the end.
Yes. I mean, I think some of the ways in which this film is relevant today and contemporary. I think, you know, the film itself sort of prophesizes the decline of male supremacy in a certain light, and I think the Goldblum character in particular, and the sort of outdating of the lobotomy, which is typically sort of a male procedure in terms of like muting the volatile. I think it's sort of foreshadowing the decline of that supremacy, and I think that is very much what's happening today too. So I think it is very contemporary.
And Tye, when we were talking in Venice about this film when it premiered, I remember you said something that with Rick, the thing you like most about him is his bravery, that he likes to talk about things that kind of nobody even wants to talk about. So with this film, what was his idea the first time you started to talk about it? Because it took some years for it to finally happen, right?
Yeah, I think one of his ultimate missions was to make a film that was very unsettling and forces you to kind of contemplate some of these ideas and some of these standards in which we live by, including sex and how we identify with our sex and those roles that we take on. And I think that something that we always talked about was that the character that I play, Andy, was kind of, you know, if you will, almost, very objective to every idea in the film, and questioning the film just as the audience would, you know, of all the things that the movie explores and all the themes, including, you know, mass manipulation within health, within these institutions where people were convinced that this procedure was beneficial when it was actually, you know, towards the decline of, you know, Jeff Goldblum's character, who's modeled after Walter Freeman, the famous lobotomist. You know, they were just using this procedure to manipulate people, but there was a lot of that going on, I think, in the air, and there's a lot of, I think that stuff still happens today. So, yeah, I think the whole mission was to do something that was completely outside of the box and, you know, just, yeah, unsettling.
And Walter Freeman, if I remember, he famously lobotomized also somebody from the Kennedy clan.
Yeah,
So he was quite a powerful figure. So I was wondering, how much research did you want to do, given that yet this name actually keeps popping in?
A little time putting it together, and Rick did some extensive research. I mean, he did very extensive research on Freeman as a person. There's some biographies out there on him, and you know, I mean, he went into deep research on as far as like the history of his philosophies and his medical work and you know, work with obviously the lobotomy. So like researching that, and we researched kind of everything from that, his story and his world to, you know, actual, you know, hospitals at the time, and you know how the rooms were constructed and how, you know, mental health institutions back then were obviously very horrific. You know, it was a very awful time for mental health, and kind of still is. But specifically back then, I mean, we did everything from any kind of historical piece you do. You want to kind of go in and obviously it's not like it's not his story. It's still fictionalized and it's very loosely based on him. But it's enough to understand the medical field and the time period and the work that he put into to this new found thing. We spent a good amount of time researching, and Rick specifically dove into.
Then maybe I can ask you, because this is not the first time you worked with Rick, although the last time, well, your role was a little bit more exuberant, I would say. So, can you just talk a little bit about, your chemistry, because clearly, I mean, there is something that kind of makes you want to work together over and over again, and things that are very different. So maybe, how was that exciting for you, being that different this time around?
Yeah, you mentioned Rick's bravery earlier, and I guess that's something I've always admired about him as a filmmaker and him as a director and a storyteller. But I love the way that he's very open to all kinds of ideas, and he's a great collaborator. And I think sometimes you work on a film and it's very much the director is kind of in the driver's seat, which I think is good. But I think in this case, and I think Ryan could probably vouch for me as well. You've done 2 films with Rick. Yeah, so we both have done. We did a movie called Entertainment, and we did a movie called this movie. But yeah, I just love how collaborative he is with his cast and his DP Lorenzo. And it makes for a really I think the experience of making the film becomes very, very intimate, and so it kind of allows you, because you have this transparency with each other and an openness about what it is you're exploring or trying to do with the film. It allows it to become, I think, more complex, and allows you to create a layer of depth that sometimes is hard to reach when you're making a film. And so yeah, beyond that, it's his bravery and his just how daring he is as a filmmaker to do something that he knows is not, the themes in this movie aren't easily accessible. We're not asking people to watch this movie and be able to, completely elaborate on every aspect of it. I think it's a film, and its intention is to make you think and to make you wonder. And when you spark to all those ideas and themes, hopefully it stays with you after you leave the theater.
Earlier on, he suggested I should ask you about how was it working with Denis. And I'm afraid to do it because this scene is just, pure craziness. So, would you mind sharing that with us?
I think I can speak for all of us in saying that, we're all big Denis Lavant fans and big fans of his movies. And, personally, I think I can still speak for all of us and say that we were a little bit nervous. I've never seen a film that he's not completely fucking crazy. He's always so intense and so maniacal and whatever, there's always deep levels of intensity in his performances. And I think with this is the same thing. I think, when Rick wrote the film, we always had him in mind for that character, and luckily he accepted. But, in writing that, you kind of think that unhinged, that Lavant that you always see in film. So already I think it's already an intimidating process, and it was a very difficult process getting him to the film. A very long story. We'll need many drinks and other things to talk about that. But no, I think it's when Denis came, he's such a sweet guy and such a kind of strangely, not to spoil it for anybody, he's a normal guy. He's an act. I mean, normal is not the right word. I don't believe that. He's not normal is definitely not the right word. But but he's very much a sweet person. He's a personal guy. He's very fun and easy to work with. And as Tye said, Rick's very collaborative with his actors and crew and everybody that works with him. And I think specifically, Denis, I think in a lot of ways is very inspirational for directors too, and just his antics and theatrics. And I think seeing that just kind of inspires that characters in a way. So. He's an amazing person.
About how during that last scene, we obviously did it several times, and our entire crew spoke English, and obviously speaking a lot of French, except that we would cut, and you would turn around, and the majority of the crew is just crying, and you don't know what he's saying, you don't know necessarily what the scene is about, and I think people he just sort of evokes emotion. So anyway, he was an incredible person to work with, and very warm.
The Denny thing was more like a functional producer, logistic producer pain in the ass more than anything. It's not, it's just like, just a thing that logistically difficult. Jeff, I think this film is a Jeff Goldblum movie. I think for him as a person, and I think Rick's relationship to and research of the character, and I think just in a lot of ways, Rick and Jeff are very similar. I mean, they're both very smart people, but also I think very kind of like they both, as Tye had mentioned, kind of want to take bold projects and bold subjects and bold, make bold cinema. So I think it's in a lot of ways I think they're kind of not the same person, but there's a lot of similarities in their personalities and their interests and what they want to kind of seek and dive into as far as certain characters. So I think I don't think it was much convincing for either Tye or Jeff to kind of do it, because I think Rick brings a lot of excitement, and Tye had already worked with Rick, so that was already known to him. But it's also like I think with you get that in right away that Rick wants your involvement and wants your collaboration and wants you to kind of like help build the movie together, rather than just like some directors are just like, and I said it's fine. It's like some directors are like, this is what I'm doing, this is what I wrote, this is how we're gonna do it, and that's it, and that's fine. With Rick, it's a encompassing, collaborative, creative conversation and execution. So I think actors, if I were an actor, I would appreciate that too, as far as like diving in there and creating the story with you, as opposed to like being told what to do. So I think in general, I think just having those conversations early on were probably what kind of convinced Jeff to join us.
Whenever Jeff is being interviewed, I mean, people wait a few minutes and then they always ask him about Jurassic Park. And after today's Q&A that we had for Friday's Child, there were so many fans coming to you with the DVDs for Rock Player One, and wanted to talk to you about it. So I wonder, does it actually get more difficult for you now to choose projects like The Mountain, like Friday's Child, or do you think it's still relatively easy, or they're just different expectations, you would say?
Well, first let me say that after The Mountain, no one will ever ask Jeff Goldblum about Jurassic Park anymore. It's always going to be about The Mountain. We're like, what is that film?
Po pierwsze, to już powiedzmy to sobie, po tym filmie po górze już nikt przenigdy nie spyta Jeffa o Jurassic Park.
But no, I think that people always ask me that question about the differences that I find in doing a big budget movie and a low budget movie. But ultimately, you're there and you're collaborating with a group of people, and you're all on the same page with one story, and you're all trying to tell it to the best of your abilities. So it doesn't matter if the budget is $200-300 million or just a couple $100,000. I think ultimately it's these guys are producers. They're like, no, come on, it's much easier with. But no, I mean, you do the best with the resources that you've been given, and it's always going to be, tough and challenging. Not, maybe not like with how much equipment's on set, what your budget is, but as far as like narratively constructing a film and making sure that you're hitting each beat and that's going to land with the audience, and that it's all going to piece together and be this coherent thing that you intended on it being in the very first place. That's always the challenge.
Well, sometimes they are, you can say, unbearably perfect. They are just they seem even too perfect. So was that a result of improvisation, or was that, or had it been so carefully planned that you even felt restricted in some way because you had to follow this precisely set out path?
I mean, I guess to speak about the visual aspect of the movie, if you notice in the film, no one ever enters the frame. So every cut, people are already inside the box. And, you know, Rick chose a 4:3 aspect ratio because he wanted this movie to be very formal and very structured, you know, in its aesthetic and its visual aesthetic. And so I think from the very beginning, that was always the intention, to deliver or to, you know, deliver a visual aspect of the film that was, I wouldn't say unconventional, but very structured and formal.
Yeah, I was going to add too, as Tye said, it's like, you know, Rick wanted something very formal, a very formal frame, and almost like a, you know, like a Alex Soth or William Eggleston photograph, where they're always kind of like everything's very set and deliberate and specific. So I think just like the formalism is, you know, unlike entertainment, which is kind of a little formal in some way, but a little more sloppy and a little more free flowing. This is like very, Rick wanted to kind of like a conservative, almost a conservative approach to the visuals. As far as the sets, some of the most hospitals of that time period, we shot in New York and upstate New York and Washington State, and you know that they really don't exist in Washington as a sort of newer part of the U.S. But a lot of the mental institutions are you know, either closed or decrepit and falling apart, so they're pretty unusable. We shot in one former mental hospital that was a standing hospital. Now it's, I think, a prison or some kind of prison institution. And then some sets we built. You know, we shot in a lot of old schools that were built in, you know, late 1800s and had like very wide hallways. If you look at the mental hospitals of the time, they're always like very wide hallways where, you know, the benches would be placed and patients would come back and forth. So, you know, we had to kind of like improvise and be creative with the location we found, which was a deep search, and that those locations don't really exist. So we have to kind of like, you know, really kind of dig in creatively and find that approach. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff some stuff we built and some or created, and some stuff were existing.
Yeah, I mean, I would just add that Rick is very musically talented. He's produced like 10 albums, you know, outside of his directing career.
He was in like multiple bands before he was a filmmaker.
Spokane. I mean, from the very beginning, you know, he was always talking about the sound, I think, and you guys could probably elaborate a little more, but even the marimbas that you hear, and the, what was the song called, that plays on through that Jeff Goldblum sings that they see at the institution. There's one song that's carried on throughout the entire film that's like, did you ever love me? But it's just, you know, that, and then the marimbas, and also that mellotron or whatever they were using, it just makes it completely eerie. And I think paired with the, you know, the landscape of the Pacific Northwest, it really kind of amplifies that feeling. But that was always, I mean, that was always his idea from the very beginning, for the movie to feel and sound that way.
Thank you so much for being with us tonight, and thank you so much for staying that long. Yes. I just wanted to say that tomorrow Tye is still going to be with us for another showing of Friday's Child. So hopefully see you there.
Jutro
The
jeszcze
Mountain,
Wolnego
what they
Ducha?
just saw it.
Wolnego Ducha jeszcze można obejrzeć jutro.
Unless you want to see it again.
Kto nie widział albo kto chce zobaczyć jeszcze raz, to zapraszamy.